more Galileos do you need? My name is Matthew Kroll.
And the human condition is one which requires anesthetic. My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film Bohemian Rhapsody.
Rhapsody?
Rhapsody.
Rhapsody. What?
Rhapsody.
Was that a Tiger song?
Sure.
Or was that Traps? Ah, man.
Trap City.
Yeah, I don't know. I know nothing about music anymore, and I'm going to know even less by the end of this podcast.
Wow. You're going to drain it?
Yeah, I'm going to completely drain it. We still haven't come to our top 10 of the year list, but we are trying to back catalog all the films that we missed this year. And this is an interesting one because this is a film that I think I would have completely bypassed and completely skipped, quite happily.
Sure.
Had it not been for an event that happened, was it 2 weeks ago now?
I guess it was.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago now, where an interesting event happened at the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, or the Hollywood Press Association, I believe, ran an event that I think you might have heard of.
What is it called?
It is called what is this, Golden Globies? What is this? I don't understand.
Wow.
I can't read this.
Wow.
The Golden Globes, where two movies that I think we kind of, not purposely, like we haven't outwardly rejected reviewing these films, but just kind of, had other things to review.
Sure.
Two films won the best, the best motion picture drama and best motion picture musical and or comedy.
Yep.
And those were Green Book and Bohemian Rhapsody, much to the chagrin of many critics and film goers alike.
I was always psyched for Green Book.
Yeah, I'm curious to see Green Book. I'm not convinced from what I've seen of the film that it's something I would be.
What have you seen of the film?
I've seen a partial trailer and I've seen an outline and I've read a number of articles. Just because I don't watch a trailer doesn't mean I don't know films exist.
Okay, I was just gonna say because you for what you've seen of the film would be the trailer. What you've read about the film.
What I've read about the film. What I'm aware of the film.
Right.
I wasn't entirely convinced. Plus, also Green Book seems to be playing in a world that is fairly familiar, racial tropes. So I'm not, willing to give the film the benefit of the doubt. But upon the initial presentation, I was like, I don't know if I need to see this, but maybe I will.
I had a friend that kept confusing it with Green Room.
Yeah. As did an online publication, which I'm very fond of, called Bright Walls Dark Room, which did this thing about every film with the title green in it is better than Green Book. This is when the Golden Globes was announced.
Wow.
Except they kept miswriting Green Book as Green Room. So they kind of messed up their own gag.
Oh,
but,
no.
But I understood the sentiment. Anyway, yes, the Green Book and Bohemian Rhapsody. And I'm curious for our listeners if you would want us to kind of fill out the awards cycle of films, because I don't know if these films are going to... The Golden Globes isn't necessarily an accurate predictor of what will go to the Oscars, but whether you would like us to fill out those holes in the cinematic year with Green Book and Green Room. We are doing Bohemian Rhapsody. We're doing it right now.
Yeah.
But I did post a tweet yesterday of the other films that I really do want to see before the end of the year. None of them included Green Book or Bohemian Rhapsody. They were Cold War, Burning, Minding the Gap, Zama, and The Rider. Oh, and Private Life. But the problem with that is that's 6 weeks of podcast before we get to a top 10.
And also the Golden Globes.
Yeah.
I love that there's another award show. It's great.
There are many award shows.
Yes,
the Golden Globes is the big one.
It's the second largest.
Yeah.
It's the middle child of award shows.
What's the little child?
I don't know, like the Razzies, like whatever the Teen Choice Awards, the MTV Movie Award, like I don't know, whatever.
I think it would be the Film Critics Choice Awards. Yeah.
But it's interesting because some years the Golden Globes is a real good barometer for what's going to happen at the Oscars. And other years, it feels more like the pizza party for all of the movies that didn't win at the Oscars.
I think it's always worth reminding people that Cher's movie Burlesque was nominated for Best Picture at the Golden Globes one year, along with the Johnny Depp vehicle, The Tourist.
So yeah, there's... And look, I love that there's sort of differing opinions on the quality of film. That's why we're here.
Right.
But I never quite know which Golden Globes. Am I going to get the Golden Globes that are the prescient, knowledgeable sort of what will happen at the Super Bowl of film, which again, I don't really like the Oscars anymore, but we can't change what it is.
Right.
Or is it going to just sort of like go off on its own and try to award people that it thinks won't get awarded at the Oscars?
Who knows? Who knows? So yeah, but just to qualify it now, the films that were nominated for Best Picture in the drama category were Black Panther, Black Klansman, Bohemian Rhapsody, If Beale Street Could Talk, and A Star Is Born, all B movies. And the motion pictures that were nominated for musical or comedy were Crazy Rich Asians, The Favorite, Green Book, Mary Poppins Returns, and Vice. So I've seen all of those movies, bar Mary Poppins Returns and Vice.
I saw Vice.
And of course I haven't seen Green Book. So in the Best Motion Picture Drama category, I've seen all of these films. And I guess before we go into our review, I'd be very impressed to meet the person who looked at that list and picked Bohemian Rhapsody as the best picture. So let's move on. But listeners, if you have an opinion about the Golden Globes or whether we should fill out the roster with Green Book, please let us know by emailing us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod.
Also, you can leave us good old-fashioned reviews. Remember when reviews just happened, Shahir, and they were old-fashioned and good back in the good old days of reviewing?
Well, that's a very good transition, because the thing I wanted to bring up before we actually started our review of Bohemian Rhapsody, and again, it might be prescient to our review of Bohemian Rhapsody, was an article written by Rob Harvilla over at The Ringer. And the article was entitled "The Art of the Pan. What is the point of a bad review in 2019?"
Oh, I like this.
Yeah, and
where's this going?
And the article is fascinating. It's worth reading. It opens with a quote from John Krasinski talking about Paul Thomas Anderson basically defending bad movies. And basically, Paul Thomas Anderson says something along the lines of, you should never call a bad movie a bad movie. You should always support things that go for the fences and swing big. But the article kind of goes on to counteract that and say, no, some movies deserve to be trashed. And we are living in a different era now where a bad review, which may have been an indicator of a movie's quality, is also a call to arms for people who support that movie. And most of the reviewing is going on in the social media comments around the movie.
Sure.
So, for every bad review of Bohemian Rhapsody, there are comments, posts, that sort of thing about how, hey, bro, it's just a movie, or Queen rocks, or that sort of thing.
I mean, you could see the Rotten Tomatoes. It's a 62% for reviews from critics, but a 90% from audiences.
Right, yeah. And so there's that divide again between audiences and critics on terms of what they like. But I think it points to an interesting thing about what is the role of the critic in the cultural conversation, and is that role still relevant? And I think, obviously we get up and do a podcast every week. So I think we believe that our role as cultural commentators on a social product has some value.
I might disagree.
Oh, you don't think what we say is valuable?
I think what we say is valuable to our listeners who enjoy having a conversation with us or listening to us particular. But I think the role of the overarching critic, not just us, but people who do this in general,
right,
is very important, because it holds feet to fire or praise where it should be given, etc. The issue with the internet, and we fall into this category, as do a lot of people. Actually, I'm not even going to say as far as like the quality of a reviewer, because that's just subjective regardless.
Yeah.
It's the sheer amount of us that make us insignificant. All of us.
Right.
Not this podcast, not Roger Ebert or whoever. Like, it's because so many people now call themselves film critics.
Yeah.
And then there's like, well, what does that mean? How do you like da 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 da?
And that's where in the modern age the aggregators like Rotten Tomatoes comes into play, right? Because they're not critical. They basically allow us to see critical consensus from a broader point of view, right?
That's the idea.
Yeah,
I mean, then you have to follow the money as who owns Rotten Tomatoes and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
So my point is, while I do think the act of criticism is a incredibly important societal thing, from everything from films to different art forms to politics to everything, because it helps you at least get a pulse of a subdivision of people about a thing. I think much like a lot of stuff on the internet, no one is special because everyone is there,
right?
And it lessens the act itself.
So this is this is going to be a direct quote from Rob Harvilla, but in terms of criticism, I think one of the best arguments for criticism comes from a movie, and that would be Ratatouille, where the critic, I can't remember who did the voice, might have been John Hurt or someone like that. I'm probably getting that completely wrong. Makes an argument that the critic's role is to remind the audiences of the power of good art. And to allow them to navigate art, or to assist in navigating art, but they are not a substitute for the art themselves. Though criticism is an art unto itself as well, and beautiful criticism, especially. And I think what this article is talking about is the beauty of negative criticism, which allows the writer often to kind of more eloquently create a point about why something is bad.
I guess I'm going back and forth on, is criticism art?
Right.
Because I could, to be honest, if you put me on a debate team and said to argue either point, it is or it isn't, I could feel like I could accurately do it.
Right. I think like writers like Pauline Kael, who whose work, Pauline Kael and Roger Ebert, whose work basically framed how we see films in the modern 21st century. I would define them as artists in their own right, as well as being cultural commentators, because they're absolutely stunning writers. And I actually the book I read this year, which was really fascinating, was Roland Barthes' the French philosopher book ecstasy, which is basically an extended novel, which is a criticism of a short story called Saracen. And it is a beautiful piece of writing. It's an extraordinary piece of writing, which examines how to understand and how to structure an argument about a piece of work, and in doing so, it becomes a piece of art unto itself. So I think I can see the argument against it, but I think I've read enough criticism to realize that criticism unto itself is an art form.
But the thing about
good criticism is an art form.
The thing about it is, in order to truly define if criticism is an art, you have to define what art is, and you can't. So,
or everything is art,
nothing is like it does eventually break down into the semantic.
Yeah, well, criticism is all about semantics.
Yeah, I know,
and I'm always up for semantics.
Wait, I see what you did there.
Yeah,
that worked on a few different levels.
But the quote I want to bring up from Rob Harvilla is this one here, which is, and this again might be prescient to our review of Bohemian Rhapsody, but reviews aren't necessarily meaner now, nor are they necessarily more of them. But the social media outrage that necessarily follows a righteous takedown might convince you otherwise. Is the critical conversation meaner now? Possibly. Is it louder now? Undoubtedly.
Yeah.
And I think that comes back to your point of there's more people talking.
So here's the deal. I started in the critic game before I was ever in the industry. Mm-hmm. I was Stephen Buja from Oscar Watch. We did Same Night Movie Review.
Yeah.
And it stemmed.
Yeah.
God, this was 14 years ago.
Yeah.
This is before YouTube was a thing. And
I thought you were about to say this is before you were even born.
Before you were even born, Shahir.
Yeah.
We went to go see the film Ultraviolet, starring Mila Jovovich.
Yeah.
And it was so bad that Steve put a camera on me, and I drunkenly ranted at it for 4 minutes, making good points, but being a loud asshole.
Right.
And then we made sort of a little mini side gig out of us doing a review of the films in the style of the films, but really most like when we trashed a film, we trashed a film. Now, and I feel like my point about this is, I don't think a lot of the stuff that we were doing back in the day when I was a younger man, was as valuable as I thought it was at the time.
Okay.
I think being loud and being funny is not necessarily, even though you are critiquing a film, is not necessarily criticism.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of the internet, for every good one, or every bad one, I can think of a good one. Like for every cinema sins, I can find a Bob Chipman. You know, like I right. like the field is wide.
Yeah.
But I personally got real sick of just sort of like snark and negativity because you think you could do it better.
Right. Yeah, there is a distinction. And obviously you're also coming at it from a point of view where there was a transition in the way media works, which is that you weren't publishing to a large critical site
No,
or anything like that.
we were uploading quick times to websites.
Yeah, exactly. So so you maybe that would be closer akin to the social commentary, like commentators, basically.
Yeah.
But criticism has changed. Public criticism has changed. A person like Bob Chipman, who has a platform, but other critics like Lindsay Ellis, Patrick Willem, who don't publish to larger conglomerated sites,
but they also don't normally, like, they won't give other than like a tweet or something, they don't do a review of films actively coming out. They'll do a 30-minute deep dive into why the new Beauty and the Beast is good or bad, and
I think we've talked about that on this podcast as well, which is, I think that the best criticism is not a good bad, should you see it, should you not see it, 5 stars, thumbs up, thumbs down kind of thing. There are engagements with the topic, and I think that's when that's
what I gravitate to.
Yeah, like criticism is more of an art when there's an engagement with the topic that
like, and it's funny because it doesn't have to be entirely rigid. You just have to have a way of how you speak about it. Like Jenny Nichols is one of my favorite. I would call her a social commentator,
right?
Because she'll take something. She just took like The Christmas Prince and The Christmas Prince 2 from Netflix, and like did a 30-minute, very entertaining but also like accurate and insightful breakdown of like why that film is what it is and where it failed and how it did. Like, and I was just like, the entire time she's doing it almost as satire, but you're getting it,
right?
So I'm a fan of those types. Also, other podcasts in alternate dimensions where there are more than one podcast about movies that we listen to often break down and make great points as well.
And we will try to do the same.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see how it goes. Yeah, the jury's still out on what
I do think there's too many of us.
Right.
I think we should all, no matter who we are, great or small, have a Hunger Games-esque competition, and we should cull it down to like 10%. And I'm willing to fight in that battle.
I will say this though. I think there is the art of written criticism is lost among many newer film critics, and the art of written criticism is a really amazing tool to refining how one thinks about movies.
100%.
And being able to write a review and write a cogent theoretical argument on paper is something that I think is changing, because a lot of us don't read newspapers anymore. So the likes of which, like reading A.O. Scott or something like that is changing. Or even, like controversially reading someone like Armand White.
Right.
And I think there are a lot of social commentators that only work in the spoken word form or in video and that sort of thing. But my start in the criticism game, so to speak, was to write for the student newspaper. And then I eventually became the editor of the student newspaper and then the editor of a couple other newspapers, the film editor. So my beat was discussing films, interviewing people, that sort of thing. And what I found is the more I wrote, the better I got at being able to think critically about a film.
Well, so that's the key too, because I'm now going to blow your minds with the most basic of knowledge, but the more you do a thing, the better you get at it. And one of the things that I am constantly impressed with the critics that I read is not just the quality of the piece that is being written, but the fact that they can do that quickly and multiple times a week. Like I'll always speak for me. I can write I think a well put together and I'll say borderline insightful written review about a film.
Right.
It will take me way too fucking long.
Right.
Like, because I'm not trained in doing it. Like I could write you a beautiful Bohemian Rhapsody thing in like a week. Right. But these people write it so fast, and it's they're great.
I would.
That's where the artistry comes in, I think, too, is in process.
Yeah, I would encourage all our listeners to sign up for a Letterboxd account if they can, because Letterboxd is basically the Facebook for film criticism and film reviewing and film logging. And what I like about it is there are a number of critics on Letterboxd. I found, because I do write reviews on Letterboxd for films, but what I find is that the reviews I write are sort of more like what I used to write in terms for print media, and it doesn't play on Letterboxd.
Oh, no.
Whereas like someone comes in with like a hot take of like 3 lines, and that's what Letterboxd plays towards. But it's not a game like it's not a winner game or anything like that. What I like is I just get a forum to write my thoughts as I used to, and it is very helpful for me to be to have to be clear and concise and to think about how my words are structured and how I'm making an argument and does every word count.
Sure.
So I would encourage people to sign up for a Letterboxd review account, and if you have one, you can follow me there. But you don't have
Free
to.
plug. Letterboxd.
Yeah, Letterboxd is great, but we are moving on now.
Mamma mia.
To Bohemian Rhapsody. Now, this is gonna. I feel like this is gonna be an episode with a lot of. Before we get to that, there is an elephant in the room with Bohemian Rhapsody. Okay, so obviously it won best picture at the Golden Globe.
And Mike Myers is in the movie. Let's put that right
spoiler. A lot of people don't know that.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of people didn't realize that.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's very blatant. No, I do want to talk about that. I was making a joke because that's not the actual elephant in the room.
But the elephant, there is a large elephant in the room with this film, which is the director. If you notice during the Golden Globe speech, nobody thanked the director, which would be a sort of common acceptance speech act from the actor, and the director was not present during that award ceremony.
The partial director or the
was Dexter Fletcher there?
The credited director.
Was Dexter Fletcher there?
I don't know.
Okay, so but I don't believe
no one mentioned the director.
Yeah, nobody mentioned the director. And this film is as per DGA, Directors Guild of America requirement, required to list Bryan Singer as the director. Though Bryan Singer was fired from the film at some point, with approximately, I think, during
December 4th.
Yeah, during a holiday break period. And another director, Dexter Fletcher, was brought on to finish the film. Dexter Fletcher, interestingly, I just rewatched Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. Mm-hmm. Dexter Fletcher was the chef in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. The guy who's got the obsession with knives. Yeah. And so when I looked it up, I was like, oh, that guy. And Dexter Fletcher is, relatively speaking, a younger director. He's made 4 feature films at this stage, including a musical based on the work of the Proclaimers called Sunshine and Leith, which is really cool because Sunshine and Leith, or I can't remember if that was the Proclaimers. There's one Proclaimers album that I had, which I think is a fantastic album.
They made more than one song?
Their album is extraordinary.
Whoa, I'm gonna check that out.
Really, really, really great. And to the point where 500 Miles, whatever it's called, is like the least interesting song on that album. Yeah. And there's an entire musical devoted to it, directed by Dexter Fletcher. But again, Dexter Fletcher was brought in to finish the film. By Dexter Fletcher's account, the film was 2/3 complete when he arrived on the scene, and was just required to finish out and help see through the editing because Bryan Singer was contractually removed from the film. Now, Bryan Singer is an interesting figure in his own right, which is that he is a filmmaker of significant note in both of our lives, I guess, in that he directed one of my favorite all-time favorite films of all time outright, which is The Usual Suspects, and another film which is controversially very difficult to find right now called Apt Pupil, but also directed possibly some of the most important superhero films of all time, the X-Men and X-Men 2 films, as well as Days of Future Past and the X-Men Apocalypse.
Yes.
But has since been what's the word I'm looking for? Where you're accused of something, but you're not convicted. Unconvicted, I guess would be the phrase. Unconvicted.
I was going to say open secret.
Yes, Open Secret is the name of the documentary, which outlines a little bit more of the Bryan Singer. Not mythology, but I guess the world around the world in which Bryan Singer may be associated with.
Yeah, I mean, what is it? Are we at a solid 90% sure that he's kind of a scumbag at this point?
Again, unconvicted,
sure,
accused many times over, associated with people whom have been convicted, including one Gary Goddard who directed Master of the Universe. Yep. Which was an interesting one for us because again we reviewed Master of the Universe, and then realized afterwards that the director of Master of the Universe had been accused very many times over of serious sexual allegations, and we added an addendum to our review of that because we felt that it was important to note. Mm-hmm. So I guess what I'm saying is it is important to note that Bryan Singer has been accused many times over of sexual harassment, and in many cases very serious sexual harassment of minors. So we have long gestated. I know everyone who listens to this podcast knows that we have talked that we are going to be doing this episode.
I would argue they're sick of us talking about doing it.
And would rather we did it at this point. There's been some hold up on this episode for a number of logistical reasons, so we apologize for that.
We're trying to find the perfect guest.
I know, and we're being very picky about it.
So
it's generating a lot of internal debate, but we have an episode coming out that will be entitled "Separating Art from the Artist," which is very much
question mark.
Yeah, the title gives away what we'll be talking about. But Bryan Singer will be very much featured, and I think the decision to review Bohemian Rhapsody will be very much featured in that discussion. I guess the only thing before I hand it over to you to discuss that topic is to say that I think it's important to lay out the context with which a person is being discussed before we review the film that is being discussed. So I guess that might frame how I think about separating art from the artist already. But yes, if you are interested, you should. And if you're interested in whether you should see Bohemian Rhapsody or not, you should, in my opinion, be aware of the people that are involved in it and come to your own choice about it. And I think that calculus changes when you're a critic.
And
I think our roles are slightly different in that because we are informing you about whether or not to see a film. But yes, Bryan Singer is openly being accused many times over of serious sexual and not minor cases, not cases that have.
I would argue that all sexual harassment is serious sexual harassment.
Well, for example, there are cases where, like, Aziz Ansari was accused of sexual harassment, where the issue of whether he sexually harassed someone and there's no criminal accusation,
right?
And I'm saying in these cases, there's criminal accusation.
That's the word.
So there's very distinct cases here.
I would argue not only just choosing if you're going to see a film or not, but if you're going to see it, how you're going to see it. And by that I mean, for this particular film, just all cards on the table. We saw a screener.
We did see a screener
from award season. So
I think that's a broader question because if you're gonna engage in art as a viewer, should you pay for it?
It depends on that depends on a lot of different things. And we can get into that more when we get into the art versus artist thing, because I think that will come up more, and we could get into the weeds here, but then we do the episode without a guest.
I'm just addressing what you just said. Not everyone has access to screeners, and screeners provide a different function for critics.
Yes.
So yeah, well, what do you think about the topic of Bryan Singer in the context of whether we discuss this film?
I mean, I did a lot of sort of I hate using the word research when you just read articles on the internet, because it doesn't feel like research. Research is something that I still feel like needs to be done in a library, which I know is not true. I read a ton of articles about the creation of this film. And one I want to find, it might have been Vanity Fair. They're all bleeding together at this point.
There's a long gestating article by Esquire about Bryan Singer's life, which he has addressed that he will publicly denounce and possibly sue for libel, and as since that article hasn't come out, but
sure.
IndieWire has a couple of good timelines of.
But the gist of what I've put together from reading a lot of these articles is for whatever reason, and a lot of them not really having to do with all of the serious accusations that have been put forth on Bryan Singer. Bryan Singer, from the beginning of this project, was slowly fading off of the project. And by that I mean, I think, and again, this is all hearsay and whatnot, but he was dealing with some actual family issues. And it made him distant. It made him hostile. Maybe he's those things normally. Who knows? I don't know the man. But the entirety of this would be like he would show up to set, or he wouldn't. The director of photography would then start directing, because that's normally what happens when a director goes sort of MIA, either internally or externally. And then he, from what I understand, Bryan Singer at a certain point requested time off to be with an ailing parent, as he said. And then I think they used that, the studio used that particular moment because they couldn't stop filming to let him go, based on not only just that, but all of his misdeeds on the film, of course, then probably compounded with all of the stuff going on. They were probably honestly looking for a way, and to remove him from the project. And then, of course, a second director is brought on to bat cleanup. And as far as his involvement goes, and we were talking about this a little bit before the episode. The film that we watched, Bohemian Rhapsody, as it sits in the public release, I feel like does not feel like a film directed by the Bryan Singer that sort of directed these films that we talked about before. This film, and this sort of gets into my first thoughts about it. You can see the internal problems with the craft of this film nakedly on the front of it. Like it is. I believe the technical and most accurate term I can use is hodgepodge.
Right.
And therefore, when after seeing it, and granted, I didn't know this going into it, that it would feel this way.
Okay.
But I was like, oh, this doesn't even feel like one. I mean, it obviously wasn't one director. This feels like it took a village to drag this across the finish line.
Right.
So as far as my feel, I mean, look, Bryan Singer. Again, we'll get into this more with the art versus artist thing, but I don't like him, and I don't particularly want to support him.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get into the argument of, well, more than one person worked on this movie, and then we've talked about that before and all this other stuff. So that gets more into the weeds. But as far as Bohemian Rhapsody goes, I didn't see, as the film, after I watched it, I didn't see enough Singer in it, in my opinion, to
But he is credited as the director.
He's credited as the director, but it there's a lot of people that are credited for things that didn't do the things that they are credited for.
Are you saying that you don't think he directed the film?
I'm saying if you in my, again, this is armchair bullshit.
Right.
But in my head, after everything I've read, after the film I watched, this feels like something that was created by committee.
Okay.
This doesn't feel like a cohesive vision of one particular person. Mm-hmm. This feels like something that had someone at the helm of it that failed miserably, and other talented people came forward and dragged it across the finish line.
Okay. What does that calculation?
That gets me to sort of put aside Bryan Singer in this particular moment to be able to sort of review the film outside of his taint on it.
Here's a sort of a counter, or a sort of a probing of that line of rationale, which is that if the film was really good, and say for example, if the film was X-Men 2 we were reviewing,
sure,
would you, but the same stories had happened where Bryan Singer was, and arguably there are similar stories of Bryan Singer's behavior on X-Men 2.
Yeah, it just wasn't as, at least I wasn't, we weren't in the wheelhouse of knowing that back then.
Of course, but now we are.
Yeah.
Would that then change your calculation of how you would view the film if it was like, if the film was amazing, for example? Because I guess this is an opening salvo.
Define calculation of like what.
Well, because you've made a calculation now that you're okay with watching this film because you've made the determination that Bryan Singer wasn't really as important.
I guess I'd be less okay with it.
Right. So and I think again that'll come into play when we talk about separating art from the artist, but because I think separating art from the artist happens only in the negative. When an artist does something amazing and we look at their work, we sort of connect the two things very naturally.
Sure.
It's only in the negative when we disconnect those two things.
Right.
So I think that's an interesting...
And also when a thing is disconnected. Like this movie, that's a great way to sort of describe, I think, Bohemian Rhapsody is disconnected. There are moments of greatness in it. Mm-hmm. Rami Malek being one of them. Mm-hmm. But then there's problems with the script itself and how that was sort of put together alongside of all this other drama with the band members sort of controlling it. Whether or not you feel that this should have been this sort of PG-13, like almost a Disney-fied version of Freddie Mercury's life. Like, is that a good thing that was done so that more people can sort of get on board with this thing? Or is it a calculated money grub thing? Is it both? Like, so as far as if this movie had been a masterpiece of cinema, and yet we found out, like, I mean, I think my answer at least would be the same thing as far as like Kevin Spacey's stuff is concerned.
Right.
Like, yeah, he's a great actor, but
Right.
he's a scumbag. So I'm not really going to watch his shit anymore.
Okay.
Like, and this is one of those things.
So I'm not certain how that calculation didn't stop us from watching this movie.
Well, I watched the screener, so
Yeah.
I didn't pay money to talk about it.
Right.
Because that's normally the one minimal power that we have is voting with our dollars. Whenever this, because you and I can talk about how much we disapprove of a certain person on a certain project all damn day, but if we go and pay for it, then that's saying a little bit of a different thing.
Right.
And again, critics are in a different spot. We having access to those sort of things, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And then even the devil's advocate side of like a film is not just one person, even though we've as a culture made the director the end all be all of what the personality of the film is.
Right.
Which you could argue both pro or con to that.
Yeah. So I guess to summarize, there is a lot of baggage that this film brings to the table, and your decision to even hear us discuss this film.
Our decision.
I'm talking to the audience.
Oh.
Your decision, not you personally.
Oh, okay,
Matt, sorry. Your decision as a listener of this podcast, whether to watch the film, is based upon your level of comfort with that. I think as cultural commentators, we have a slightly different calculus in terms of what we will and won't see. And I think that again, this will all if anything, this episode is a trailer for separating art from the artist thing. But I think to move on then to the film itself, I mean, outlining this is the story of the band Queen, and in particular the artist Freddie Mercury, who is the frontman for the band Queen, and his life and legacy, all culminating around the Live Aid concert. And you've kind of said that you feel the film is disjointed.
Yes, I mean you look at any particular set of scenes in this film, and they all feel different. For instance, the Live Aid sequence is probably the highlight of the entire thing.
If I was to make any estimation of who did what on this film, I would say the Live Aid scene was directed by Bryan Singer.
Would you?
Yeah, because it is the most technically complex scene and the most. If I was a producer, for example, I would not leave that scene to someone who is untested. It is the biggest, most visual effects driven scene. It is the most elaborate set piece in the film. And it's the kind of thing that if I had to choose between a Bryan Singer and a Dexter Fletcher to direct, that would be the scene I would give to Bryan Singer. Would you disagree?
Here's the thing. I really, really, really liked that scene.
Mm-hmm. And I would guess that scene was directed by Bryan Singer.
Cool.
Yeah.
But you can't have a scene like that, for instance, and I'm talking about the film as a whole, and then have scenes of super stilted conversations in offices with 1-2 shots, and then have a press junket scene where we're just going to use weird fisheye lenses. It felt like a bag of random tricks being used throughout the film to try to get you to have an emotional response the quickest and sort of cheapest way possible throughout it. The only scene that didn't and seemed like an actual film of what this caliber should be, really, that stood out was Live Aid. The other thing about this movie as a piece, there's so many weird, complex sort of pieces with
we've
this.
We've opened a Pandora's box on this one.
It's super hard to judge a piece of cinema, let's say, or anything, but in this case, cinema, that is so ingrained in another medium, being music, that almost every audience member that goes to this thing will have a predetermined emotional connection with a lot of the content.
Right.
I admit the parts where I was on board, the more I thought about it, I'm like, oh, I'm on board because Killer Queen's playing. I'm on board because, and I'm on board because of what Queen meant to me, not what this movie is doing for me.
Okay.
Even to the point of, and this is even getting back to the Live Aid section, while I do think it is a very competent and good set of things, it's because it's Queen. It's because Rami Malek embodied Freddie Mercury, and it's because of that moment in history.
Right.
Is it a technical piece of filmmaking that is done very well? Yes.
Yeah.
But if that was a random concert with a fake band, no one would have given a shit about it. Like that's where I always have a problem with biopics. Biopics.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Because it's hard for me as a viewer to separate, especially in the moment.
There's a long history of musical biopics, though, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, Straight Outta Compton, Walk the Line, Amadeus, Ray, lots of movies. The movie I grew up with was La Bamba. That was kind of my foray into this. And I think the thing that I think is interesting about when you think about musical biopics is that there's a fairly well established structure of what a generalized musical biopic could do. And I think I tried to break this down in my own thoughts, and it, to me it comes down to sort of 4 acts, and they are the struggle, success, excess, and recalibration. So every big musical artist kind of has that thing. Unfortunately, the thing that I think is the reason why I don't think I've said this at this point, but I think this is a very bad movie.
Mm-hmm.
Is that that formula has been parodied by no less than 3 movies at this point.
How can they make these after Walk Hard? Like, how does it even work?
And I think, to me, this film sort of feels like someone didn't see Walk Hard, I was talking to a friend about it last night, and I kind of said, there was this meme on the internet where basically people were saying, I fed this script into a Twitter feed and it gave me this page,
right,
or something like that. Did you see that?
Something
like I fed this script into an artificial intelligence algorithm and it printed me this script, and it feels like to me someone fed in musical biopics into an artificial intelligence algorithm, and it came up with this movie.
Yeah.
Which is that it is by the numbers in every respect and unconvincing in almost every respect other than that final scene. And that final scene is the culmination of what this movie is. But the issue that I had in terms of critiquing this film is, can one scene save a movie?
Oh, no.
And I don't believe that's the case, although that final scene is extraordinary. It is a wonderful depiction of Live Aid, and a wonderful depiction of that moment in Freddie Mercury's life.
Now, but then again, I do have to go back to, why is it wonderful? Because the moment
is wonderful.
The moment that actually happened in real life.
But it is a wonderful capturing of that moment, and that's what that.
This is sort of my thing about that. The only thing that really can be sort of praised about that is the technical acumen that got it to be to that point.
I think I would disagree, because I think there's more than just pointing a camera at something.
I'm saying there's more to shooting a movie than just pointing a camera at something. Yeah. I'm saying the way it was captured is special, but you have to compound that. Like, for instance, because again, it's hard to just pull movie scenes out of the ether, but like, I would be more impressed as a moviegoer and as a critic, if I saw a thing on screen that never existed, but gave me this, and I'm sure this has happened, I'm not thinking of it right now, that gave me the same feeling as that did, with all of the Queen, Live Aid, Freddie Mercury stuff tied into it. If it was a fake character doing a fake thing at a fake moment, that the movie itself built up to that point to have the same emotional resonance.
I think you could see that in a film that was nominated for the Golden Globes, and that was Star is Born.
Sure, there you go.
You know what I mean? Yeah, but yeah, you're right. There is a connection between so while the structure of a musical biopic, and this is just a kind of a loose outline, there are many films that break the structure and do something different with a musical artist. And the film that I would love to point people to is I'm Not There by Todd Haynes, which is about Bob Dylan and told through a very different structure and very different way of discussing this kind of film. But if the structure is struggle, success, excess, and recalibration, then the point of that exercise is to unveil the person behind the artist whom we know and love. And I think this is true of most biopics in general, not even musical biopics. Like a film like The Theory of Everything, which is about
Stephen Hawking.
Stephen Hawking's, which is also written by the same person who wrote this, Andrew McCartan, who also wrote The Darkest Hour, the film we reviewed about Winston Churchill.
Yes.
The purpose of this exercise, whatever the structure is to either connect the artist to the art that we know, or to unveil what the person behind that art, right? And I think that's the purpose of most biopics, is to kind of lift up the veil between the thing we know and the thing we don't know, right? Like every biopic is trying to do that.
It's trying to show you a thing. I mean, it's trying to simplify a person down to an hour and a half. Like it's trying to take a concise enough snapshot and making enough concessions where it needs to tell a cohesive story about depending on like this whole
right. But
film.
That's any film. I guess what I'm saying is that a biopic is trying to the purpose of a biopic is to connect us who know the artist, or know the art, like you were saying, Queen, to the person maybe that we didn't know.
But here's the thing: I don't think that's the point of all biopics.
Okay.
I think that's definitely one angle that a creator of a biopic could take.
Right.
For instance, this, to be honest, feels more like I mean, this is the thing, right? Like, this is where it gets real cynical, in the sense of like, so this movie taught me absolutely nothing about Freddie Mercury that I didn't already know. It showed me some things I know are not true.
Right.
And because you have to put it into a context and get it, whatever rating or whatever type of story you're going to tell. But I was like, why did this movie exist?
Right.
And it's not to teach me about Freddie Mercury.
Right.
It's not to teach me about Queen. It's why Mamma Mia exists.
Right.
It's because a great band in this, and ABBA's a great band too, but like Queen saw an opportunity to not only paint themselves in a great light, because I'm sure there's a million great things about Queen, but now they're going to condense it into a film, and it also gets them back into the public.
So I think what you're talking about there is the fact that the two
remaining band members.
Is there only two? There might be
believe
three.
So.
Were heavily involved in production of this film, and Sacha Baron Cohen was originally slated to play Freddie Mercury, but he wanted to do a sort of more R-rated, difficult film about the excesses of Freddie Mercury's life.
Right.
And is it Brian May and Roger? I forget.
I'm blanking on it.
Apologies. I'm not. I know and love Queen, but I don't know every member of the band. Yeah. Opted that they wanted a more sanitized version of who Queen was.
And I think that's not just coming from again, I went the whole cynical money grubbing route. Yeah. I don't think it's just that. I also think that Freddie Mercury, they were all friends. Like, I don't think they ever wanted to do something that would drag him that would drag him through the mud. It wouldn't help them professionally, and they don't want to do that to their friends, so it lines up.
Right. But and I think it's difficult to say because Freddie Mercury has obviously passed away. But I think there's an interesting thing about Queen, which is Queen is an unusual band in that all four of them are writers in the band. So all four of them did. It wasn't just Freddie Mercury writing these songs and like, these are the songs we know. All four members contributed.
Yeah.
So I think there's a very heavy emphasis on making sure that we're aware of that as an audience. And I think that is part of the unveiling that goes on in this film is the connection between the art and the artist, to paraphrase a term that we've been using. But I think fundamentally where this film goes wrong for me is that, and it happens in the very first scene, which is, when Farouk Balsara, Freddie Mercury, goes to see his family and tells them he's going out for the night. And that the construction of that scene is so poorly written. It genuinely feels like, an artificial intelligence machine wrote angry father, disapproving father, ergo exit scene.
Yeah.
And it was I was baffled by that. And I think most of the film follows this structure without giving meaning or context to any of those ideas. So, the disapproving father is a trope. Disapproving of any artist is a trope that we've seen in almost any biopic.
Sure.
But to have it sort of played out basically for no reason in this film and without context or without any sort of sense of why is that important, or what does this mean later on, completely rings false as you're watching the movie. Not to mention that the movie does, does present things as factual, which are not factual. Now, I don't have an issue with the film like taking facts and playing with them and doing unusual things. The Longest Hour, is it the Darkest Hour?
Yeah.
Very much did that. We talked very much about that.
But it did that a lot of times. Well, maybe this film does this sometimes too, but like the subway scene that I loved in Darkest Hour.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. But they were trying to portray an aspect that they believe at least is true of Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
On screen. A lot of the stuff in this film that was not true, i.e. his revelation and revealing of his illness to his bandmates, along with a couple other things, like chronologically didn't fit into places, but they did it to sort of make Live Aid like a retro. Also, the band never broke up.
Yeah.
Queen never broke up and had this thing. They were all tired of touring, and Freddie just went off the thing, and they're like, cool.
Also, Roger went off and did a solo album before Freddie Mercury. So, I think almost everyone did a solo album before Freddie Mercury.
So that sort of idea is that feels less honest to me than you're trying to build drama out of no drama there. Whereas something like where a successful biopic, I feel like when they do take liberties, they do it in service of the person that they're trying to do. This didn't do it in service of Freddie Mercury. This did this in service of the walk hard plot structure.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of that.
Yeah.
So
and I think my point there is that I don't care if a film does that. I really don't. Like you should be able to take liberties with stories in service of narrative punctuality.
Okay.
And I think for example, Aaron Sorkin's The Social Network is a really good example of a film that is almost entirely made up, but functions truthfully from moment to moment.
But that's the thing, that it feels true.
Yeah, this doesn't function that way.
Right.
This doesn't feel true moment to moment, because every moment in this film, other than the final scene, almost wholeheartedly rings false.
Well, it's despondent. It doesn't. There's no. Honestly, could you imagine this film with a lesser person than Rami Malek playing Freddie Mercury?
It would be awful.
He is the glue, and this is not to malign any other actors or actresses in this film. I think they all do a serviceable job. It's just there's no adhesive other than a strong leading person in this role that would ever make this a cohesive thought.
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate, because I think, I guess the way I would say this is Rami Malek deserves a better movie.
Oh,
you know what
yeah.
I mean? While I think he does a very good job, and like his the final transformation to Freddie Mercury is kind of extraordinary. I think he is just in a bad movie, and it's really unfortunate, because you see that there is so much potential to have this actor playing this role in a much better movie.
Yeah.
And that is just this really unfortunate thing. But like almost none of this film works for me at a purely functional level. And to me, it began and ended with the idea that this disapproving father thing, and the disapproving father thing was the problem with it was that it was a thread that they set up at the very beginning of the film, and a thread that they play at the very end of the film, but it has no meaning to the film. It offers no substance to what we think about Freddie Mercury.
Right. Yep.
And it rings false by the very end of the film, because it's like you sort of get to this family at the very end of the film that somehow it feels like in the mythology of this world feels like has no idea who Freddie Mercury is at this point.
Right.
Like they're still living in the same house. They're not going to Live Aid. They're like, oh, maybe we should turn on the telly. And I was like, wait a minute. Are you really trying to convince me at the end point of this movie that this mother and father
and sister
whose brother is the world's biggest rock star at this point are still kind of on the fence about this?
And just going to watch on their crappy TV in their crappy house?
And live in the same house? Freddie Mercury left a $75 million estate. And,
granted, he left that all to Mary.
He did. He left half of it to Mary.
Oh.
But I'm saying, are you telling me legitimately that you believe that Freddie Mercury's disapproving father wanted to have no part of this? like his in the most successful rock star son. Now, I actually, that's a story I could buy if you told it well.
Yeah.
But you're just telling me that he's just like, man, this music, by the time Freddie Mercury is fucking Freddie Mercury, you're like, I don't know if this music thing's gonna,
I don't know if it's gonna
really,
work out for you.
I don't think it's the best thing you could do. You got to be a good person. And like Freddie Mercury kind of like triumphantly like comes back to him at the end. It was like, he says, do good things, be a better person or something that.
It's his dad's tagline. It's his dad's mantra that he says back to him. And it's like, yeah, but no one's done that in this.
And also, like, are you telling me you don't know who Freddie Mercury is at this point in the movie? Like, I don't buy that for a hot second.
So
I also, just the other thing, like, the dialogue in this film is just awful. Like, the scene where they get into the room. I mean, like, there's so many. This is one of the few films where I was shouting at the screen going, oh my fucking God, I can't believe this is happening right now. But there was a scene where they have to like say what makes Queen so special. And they're doing it to Littlefinger from Game of Thrones. Yeah. And like
Lord Baelish.
And again, it's one of these things that like it sounds like a good idea, but there's nothing in this film that has suggested this is what the case is. But
we're all misfits playing for misfits, and in some way we belong to them and they belong to us. And I'm like, well, the other three dudes in this band kind of look similar.
And everyone you're playing to seems to like what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, what is this misfits idea that you're talking about?
Well, so here's the thing. I think that is a true statement of Queen and its music and when Queen first came out, from what I understand. Like, because they did not sound like any other rock band. Like, here's the thing. Other music venues, like they do very briefly in this film when they talk about their first show or their first album or whatever, and they have all the stuff that's like panning them.
Yeah.
They did try to box them in because no one had heard like Queen
but
before.
That's after We're All Misfits. And we're, like that's like that. All of that happens after we're all misfits playing for other misfits. That line, like the line, like I don't, like the disapproving father, has no context.
Sure,
it has no context in that scene.
I want to play devil's advocate for a moment. I'm going to start arguing things that I don't agree with because of the people that I have talked with this movie about, the people I watched it with. A lot of people love this movie.
Yes, it's generated $400 million in box office receipt and won a Golden Globe.
I know. So, all of these problems, which I 100% agree are entirely true. Now we're going to get into the harder question, which you and I have discussed at great length many other times.
Yeah.
Do all these problems matter? For if we're talking, and it depends on what we judge a film's success on. Obviously, we can decide if we like a film or not.
Right.
But it seems as though the majority of people watching this had a good time or enjoyed the experience of watching it. So going back to even our original question of what does a negative review in this day and age do?
Right.
To the piece, not to the people behind it, not to the, any of that stuff. It makes me start to question personally, and I'm curious if this ever makes you question this. If any of our criticisms, which again, I 100% agree with everything you've said, do any of those criticisms matter?
So I think I had this existential question when we reviewed the film It. The Stephen King adaptation.
Yeah.
This was exactly the question I said, which is that I didn't think it functioned very well as a movie.
Right.
But people seem to be loving it.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah. And I just didn't think that movie actually even worked. And I think that's the same question that you're asking in this scenario, which is, I guess it comes down to movie versus Freddie Mercury. Right? Freddie Mercury is extraordinary. Freddie Mercury is this beautiful creature that came to our lives and blessed us with his singing. I watched so many videos after this about Freddie Mercury's voice, and the vocal range that he had, and it's like he performed on stage with an opera singer who said she's never seen someone who is able to to tonally match what he does, even in the opera world. And I've been listening to Queen post this movie just because, but I think I'm gonna and this is the biggest sort of cop out of criticism you can do, but I'm going to quote A.O. Scott's review of this film, which is that which is that Bohemian Rhapsody supplies us a reminder that the band existed, but it conveys only a superficial, suspect sense of what it was. You can do better with YouTube and a stack of vinyl records. And I think that is a true summation of answer to your question.
No, but it's not, though. Here's the thing, and it is true.
Yeah.
That is also true.
Right.
But it's not an answer to my question. Because what does this... But okay, this is a success. This movie is a success. It's
right.
There's clear.
Depending on how you define success.
Monetary and enjoyability of the majority of people that see it.
Okay.
So
not us, clearly. We're
not
clearly
us.
not in
We're
that.
not in that.
Yeah.
But so for instance, yes, you could get a better picture of who Freddie Mercury was with Google and your old vinyls. There's no question.
Yeah.
But how many people will do that versus how many people will go and see this movie to get that same feeling? Here we go. I think I might have cracked something ever so slightly.
Okay.
This is the McDonald's of Freddie Mercury's story.
Right.
And again, we've gotten into the conversation before about film as fast food or film as food in general.
Yeah.
And I've always argued that it has a place.
Yeah.
As much as and this I guess is kind of getting into my end thoughts about this.
Yeah.
As much as I didn't like this movie upon thinking about it, it did wash over me in the moment, between the moments where I was like, well, this is bad filmmaking. This is bad filmmaking. But because of the content that was involved, Queen, Freddie Mercury, Rami Malek's performance, I didn't have a terrible time doing it. Right. I had a terrible time thinking about it and dealing with it after the fact.
Yeah.
Which again, if that's not an analogy for fast food, I don't know what is. Eating it is fine.
Yeah.
It's everything that comes after that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So and then I guess I'll sort of end it on with this is like, I don't think a film like this is a problem. A film like this is only a problem if the other option never existed for the people that want it.
Right.
And that is doing your own research, listening to the music, interpreting it for yourself. This is the fast, quick and dirty, not fully correct version of a Freddie Mercury story.
Right.
And if that can give people a fleeting joy, I think it's worth existing.
Right.
But I don't know. Now we're getting into award stuff. I don't think it deserves the praise of awards season.
I think there's a sort of extension of your argument, which is that what you're arguing is anything that reminds us that Queen exists is good because Queen is good, right?
That could be part of it. That's not really what I'm saying.
No,
though.
because like, for example,
it could be anything that's like this, not just this film.
Like a documentary about Queen that became the biggest selling documentary of the year about Queen would be good because it reminds us of Queen, right? Even if that documentary was bad.
Sure, but at the same time, take this is weird to say, but take Queen out of my example. Like, for instance, I saw another film this weekend. I saw Escape Room.
Right.
Escape Room was exactly what I wanted it to be. It's a schlocky, mid-budget horror film that I thoroughly enjoyed, but I would hate to like really think about and dissect because, again, it is a type of fast food cinema to me.
Yeah.
I wanted it. I got it.
Yeah.
And I won't think about it again. Now, it's different because of now you put something like Bohemian Rhapsody and Queen into something like that. And then you get fast food cinema that you also are forced to talk about because the subject matter is so deep and important.
Right. And I think the part that I think we're sort of glossing over there is what our role is in this. And our role as critics in this, which is that our roles as critics in this is that we have determined that we understand the value of good cinema, right?
Sure.
And if we're just going to say, well, it's okay because it reminds us that Queen is great, then I think we're missing the value of what it is we do in terms of cultural commentary, which is that our role is to help people or give some kind of context for what we believe to be good cinema. And I think we should very clearly state that this is not good cinema.
This is not good cinema, but I will say this.
That should be a t-shirt, by the way.
This is not good cinema, but. There's our first merch.
Yeah.
We just designed it. So Shahir just came up with it. But I will say, so this is what my last piece, and you can end on however you'd like to end.
Why, thank you.
This is not good cinema. It has good parts in it. Again, I have to keep name dropping Rami Malek. I've loved him since Mr. Robot. I think he's a tremendous talent. I'm glad he got to do this. I wish it was in a better film.
Yeah.
But as much as I'm telling you, this is a bad movie. If you like Queen, and let me rephrase, if you know who Queen is and you've liked a couple of their tracks, which is the majority of people, and you watch this movie, most likely you're not going to hate the experience of watching it, and then you'll just forget about it. And there's something when you are in the mood for that sort of thing where I feel like that in itself has some value. Again, it is not a good movie, but you will still enjoy it partially, most likely. And that's a weird place to be for all of the reasons we've discussed.
Yeah.
So this is the most complicated thing of like, should you see it or shouldn't you see it? Honestly, there's multiple reasons, but I would say, you should see it if that's the kind of person you are, or if you want to see an example of how a film can fall apart. Like, there's lots of different ways to do it. So it's not just this is a bad film, don't see it. It's not that. It's more complicated, and I'm looking forward to never thinking about this movie again.
Well, I don't disagree with what you're saying. First off, I want to say that before I start disagreeing with it. I don't disagree with what you're saying, which is to say, on a empirical level, if you are a person who enjoys Queen, you probably will enjoy this film. I think what's important here is that we have tasked ourselves, because nobody's doing it for us, to review this film.
Sure.
Right? And to review this as a film. We're not reviewing Queen the band. We're not reviewing, musical biopics. We're reviewing this film. And I think this is the important thing here is to remember this. Someone or a group of people looked at these 5 films: Black Panther, Black Klansman, Bohemian Rhapsody, If Beale Street Could Talk, A Star Is Born, and said, you know what's the best one of those? Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah, that person's stupid.
No, a group of people.
That group of people is stupid.
Do you think that they made the right choice?
No.
Do you think we should help inform why that is the wrong choice?
I think we did, but I think also we can also say...
But do you think their argument might have been, well, Queen is good, therefore it's okay. I like Queen more than I like, what's his name from So Star Is Born.
I think the interpretation of the film itself and everything that is loaded with it, and the subject matter itself, 100% sort of pushed that decision in the same way that it's pushing the decision of the majority of people that enjoyed the film. But people love shit that is not good for them all the time. That's the defining trait of humanity.
I don't disagree with that. I guess the only point is that I'm saying is that you, Matt Kroll, not the audience this time, have tasked yourself with having a discussion and informing people what you think about this particular film.
Yeah.
Right?
I did that.
And your point is that if you like Queen, you probably will like this film.
That's the thing. Yeah. Because that's looking at the numbers, that's statistically true. Strange. And again, I guess my thing is this.
My only problem with that is that is not taking into account how bad this movie is.
I think
this movie is genuinely bad. Like, bad on a level that is like, if I don't understand what the thinking was that decided that this movie was better than If Beale Street Could Talk. A movie that I had problems with. You know what I mean?
100%.
And I think that's what our role is.
Yeah, but our role is not a definitive our role is a discussion. Our role is not a definitive black and white, whatever. Like this, I'm saying this movie is a shit ton of gray. And there's different ways that different people will look at it at different times for different reasons. And that's a more complicated conversation about a film than we would normally have based on a lot of different topics. I think the Golden Globes decision is pure shit. But that's me.
Well, here's the thing is, though, I guess the other extension of what you're saying is what we're saying doesn't matter.
I mean, you want to get into the real nitty gritty. Yeah. It doesn't. It's just our opinions of things, and
it's just like your opinion, man.
Kind of.
Yeah, and that's where I kind of
get back to the beginning.
Yeah, we've come right back to this. We've come full circle to this article, "The Art of the Pan." What is the point of a bad review?
Yeah.
Because as you said, people will go and see this movie. This movie is a success, empirically so. It has won awards now at this point. It may. go to the Oscars,
It's gonna be
which
a
is
fucking weird year.
which is the cultural lightning rod for the barometer of what is good and bad in this on the planet, whether we like it or not. I think, though, that we should emphatically state one way or the other whether we think it is good or bad and why we think it is good or bad. And I think it is empirically, objectively, subjectively, however you want to look at it. And it's unfortunate because I really like the writer, Andrew McCartan. I really, really like his work. I think he's an extraordinarily talented.
But you hate his work here.
But this film doesn't function.
Yeah.
It does not function. And it doesn't function on the most fundamental levels. And then you couple that, of course, with this external conversation that we're having about the artist behind the film.
Yep.
And I think that is the thing that I think is really fascinating, sort of meta-narratively so, is that the conversation about art and artist is kind of embedded into this film.
Sure.
Because it is about this, the story behind the art and the artist. And is there a correlation between those two things? And I think the best musical biopics do that job really well. They do that job of saying there is a correlative, or even in the opposite way, an incongruency, between the work of an artist and who the artist is personally, right? I think that's what musical biopics kind of, on the whole, try to do, or even biopics in general. Like they're about a person whose work we might know.
Right.
This film doesn't do that. It barely connects the Freddie Mercury that I didn't know to the person who sang that song, to the person who sings "We Will Rock You."
But yet it does, because here's the thing. But it does because it follows the shittiest, most baseline structure of biopics. You laid it out yourself from the beginning. It's what were the four of them?
There was struggle, success, excess, and recalibration.
It literally is if a computer spat out a biopic, meaning it is a biopic.
Right. No, I'm not saying, and I'm not suggesting it's not a biopic. I'm just saying it's not a very good one.
Okay.
Because that formula, like the other way I would describe this movie is someone remade Walk Hard, but with Freddie Mercury, without the irony and without the jokes.
Yeah.
That's what this movie is.
But that's a ton of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's this movie.
Yeah, but it's also a ton of biopics as well. So it's like,
right.
Yeah.
So,
but not every biopic has the strength of Queen behind it.
So okay, so I think getting to your separation thing, if this wasn't Queen,
if this wasn't Queen,
yeah,
this movie wouldn't be winning Golden Globes. That's my point. But like, that's my whole thing is, and that's why there's a gray area of how and why you will enjoy this.
Mm.
You're not going to enjoy it for the film craft. You're not going to enjoy it for the story. You're going to enjoy it due to the interpretation and the reenactment of a character who probably at some point in your life affected you musically.
Right.
And that's why it's successful.
I know we've kind of come to our final close, but there was one thing that I wanted to note about this movie as well, is I don't even think this movie is the best usage of Queen's music in a movie.
I think Wayne's World is the best.
Yeah, Wayne's World is a better use of Queen's music in a movie. Shaun of the Dead is a better usage of Queen's music in a movie.
Yeah.
Grosse Pointe Blank is a better usage. Like this movie has access to some of the best potential movie music out there, but it doesn't do a good job in its own film of doing it. Like when Bohemian Rhapsody comes on in Wayne's World, I'm like, that is an amazing, use of music in a film. And this is not one of them.
Right.
When Under Pressure comes on in this movie, I'm like, oh boy, you're really just like hammering home the point here. Or like Who Wants to Live Forever?
Yeah.
Way better in a Highlander movie than it is in a Freddie Mercury biopic.
Can I want to end on a nice high note, because I feel like we've been dunking a little bit. The Mike Myers cameo.
I didn't like it.
Well, I know the performance isn't good. I don't think, and the whole scene, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But I am very thankful it's there, because did you hear the whole story about how that came to be?
Yeah.
Long story short, back in the day when Mike Myers was making Wayne's World, this is a song that back in, I believe, Toronto or wherever he was from in Canada, him and his friends would literally put on in the car and like headbang to and whatever. And he wanted to put that in Wayne's World, and the producers of Wayne's World, the studio, was like, no, we need to use Guns N' Roses.
Right.
And Mike Myers was like, no, like that's not true to like who, like, you know, this character is based on, da, 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 da. And they were like, no, we're using Guns N' Roses. And Mike Myers literally threatened to walk off of the set of his first film he was ever doing. And he talked to Lorne Michaels about it. And Lorne's like, you're gonna leave the first movie you've ever done because they will not play this song. And Mike Myers is like, yeah, it's that important.
Yeah.
And then the studio budged and they used Bohemian Rhapsody, and that is the reason why that scene is so iconic.
Well, it's also iconic because Freddie Mercury approved the use of that. You know, like they had to contact Freddie Mercury.
Of course.
And he was the one who approved it. So Mike Myers appearing in this film is a sort of a nice payback to that scene. Unfortunately, when Mike Myers' character winks at the audience and goes, who's going to listen to this song headbanging in a car? I roll my eyes like hard.
But the movie already set me up for such cheese that I was like, all right. I just liked that it was there.
You like the story around how Mike Myers ended up being in this film?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's I get that.
And if that could be the one happy behind the scenes thing that we have for this thing.
Other than Queen's music is fucking great.
It is fucking great.
Freddie Mercury is a blessing.
Yeah. So yeah, this has been the only podcast about the film Bohemian Rhapsody and a bunch of other shit.
Oh man, I feel like this episode is going to come back to haunt us some way.
Of course, like every other episode
every
we're going to do.
Every episode is going to come back and haunt us, but this one in particular.
Shahir, when you're not worried about audio ghosts coming back into the night of your dreams, where can folks find you?
Ooh, the night of my dreams. That's a good name for it. Band.
But KNIGHT.
Oh, the
Night of Your Dreams.
Oh, that's a good name for the Dark Knight reboot.
Yeah.
The Dark Knight of My Dreams.
Yeah.
You can find me writing Batman fan fiction at my website, www.shahirdaud.com. Matt, when you are not driving your imaginary car in your living room, headbanging, you used to have longer hair, right?
I did.
Yeah. To Bohemian Rhapsody, shouting those high falsetto notes, oh, mamma mia, let me go. Where can people find you?
You can hear me blasting I Love My Car in my Volkswagen Jetta back in 1996. Over at mattherewkrol.com for my life and works. Also, Skeletor, the number 4 PREZ on Instagram, or Emperor MSK on Twitter. Also, you can find all my work over at Extra Credits on YouTube. We just relaunched the new season of our Extra Sci-Fi series, which we are dealing with Herbert and Tolkien, a.k.a. Dune, and Lord of the Rings. And that is some fascinating reasoning as to why artists or authors did things.
Yeah, I should. I have the entire trilogy like a brick in my bookshelf that I should one day pick up.
So please check that out. We'll be back next week with maybe Green Book or maybe another film.
We're coming up to our 200th episode again. We haven't. We're maybe separating art from the artist is our 200th episode.
We might just want to roll it in. If we just want to just really hammer home the nightmare that discussion will be.
Oh man.
But we need to get some. Hey. Listen, email us in onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com if there are any other internet critics of our caliber, you can take that however that means, up or down, that you think would be a great guest for us on the Art versus Artist episode. Email us in who you think, and I'm happy to look at those and reach out to some, depending on who it is. We've had a couple come in and come out. It's a hard topic, and it's a topic. It's a topic that, and this is to the slight of no one, that it is hard to discuss, and people in the industry have a hard time discussing because opinions, like you just said, this episode might come back to haunt you someday. Not me. I'm invincible.
But I think I was elusive about the holdup here is that people, people that we've signed up to do this episode have realized at some point that this is a difficult conversation to have, and there's no begrudging that is a real concern, and we should probably be more concerned about it. But we're dumb.
But who are we?
Yeah, who are we? We're dumb. Nobody cares.
Who will we ever be?
Oh my God, doesn't that come back to this opening thing? Is what is the point of criticism?
I guess. I just want to break free.
Time is a flat circle, and easy come, easy go.
All right.
Will you let me go?
Still no. Bye, everyone.
Bismillah.